right now, if anybody's got the BBC News on, look at those fuckers and tell me they're not straight off the street of New York.
Well,
I've never seen those. That's Met Police as well. Anybody watching the BBC News feed now, you can see these bloody, I don't know what the hell they are.
I mean, that's just at the moment, and he won't have one in the house, will he? Does so.
Oh, well, I haven't got to tell you.
The blue vehicles. Oh, yeah, these white vehicles. They are very New Yorky, aren't they?
Well, I can't see this, but is it possible that there's a sort of area denial device that we were talking about earlier?
Right, no, that's...
They did name them on the BBC, and they did say it directly from America.
Oh, really? Yeah, we're talking about these big blue things, these armoured vehicles. That's what was interesting, where they played that in the media. That basically they brought this in right at the end, and only that stopped it. So perhaps armoured vehicles is the way forward.
Yeah,
certainly an escalation in what we used to.
I'll tell you what. It's strange that we've seen almost no banks hit. We've seen almost no. Oh, we haven't seen a police station hit.
Nottinghamshire police station.
We got a picture of Mark Duggan on the screen, and he's not actually looking like a gangster. He is staring into the camera and wearing a hoodie.
Apparently, Nottingham city centre police station has been firebombed by 30 to 40 men.
Excellent. About bloody time, young men. Yeah. Turn on who you should be turning on, not on the bloody shops and people that supply you with the stuff that you want. It's ridiculous.
And Leicester as well. It's going off in Leicester.
This is my point. I personally, first of all, one thing that I have to say in all of this is I come always from the perspective of positivity, and my take on this, I've researched deeply into the Mayan calendar, and I have actually been waiting for the 5th night of the 13th Bacton, and in my mind, this is now the 5th night of the 13th Bacton, and it will be mercifully short. Probably 2 weeks at the most. If my calculations are right, 2 weeks is the very limit that this can go to. We're probably looking at 5 or 6 days. But as a result of the 5th night of the 13th Bacton, we end up with the golden dawn that this Bacton is all about. So trust me, this is not going to be this hideous clampdown that the government are wanting to make it. This is going to be the wake up call that we've been waiting for the sleeping British public for years.
I hope you're right, Jack.
We take the information that we can glean from these facts. We just need to deal in facts. We don't need to deal in rumour. We can deal in facts. Yeah, we all know how to do freedom of information requests. Yeah,
yeah.
This is the wake-up call. This is the friction that is going to incite dignity. This is gonna make people want to become a dignified nation again.
It's a desirable goal. Do you think that obviously it's their intention to create some sort?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's been their intention to control us all along, but unfortunately, we're naughty slaves.
I'm a naughty slave.
Oh, I'm definitely a fucking naughty slave. Excuse my language. I'm sorry. I don't know if you're allowed for language on your show, but I'm a Cockney.
We don't censor, mate, and so
okay.
Speak freedom.
I've got a choice in that matter.
I've met Bill Malone though, so you can't shock me, mate.
Yeah. Essentially, one of the things that I suppose possibly most concerns me is if this moves into the housing estates. I'm really not particularly worried about what's happening at the shopping centres. I mean, one of the things that I have noticed, especially driving through Peckham last night, was that all of the Asian shops, the small grocers, all of the low-value shops, apart from accidental, kind of coincidental damage, were on the large part the ones that were untouched.
Thank God for that, at least.
In fact, there were many of the shops actually stayed open through the riot, simply pulling down their shutters and manning their 24-hour windows that they usually serve drunks through at midnight, and carry on business throughout the middle of it all. And so driving through a shopping centre, every single phones for you, bloody Barclays Bank window and all of that put out, and seeing the little Asian guy with his yams and his saltfish and his tins of beans for sale, and knowing that Sainsbury's has got its fucking shutters down, I'm rubbing my hands together with glee. I am so happy.
So would you say on the whole that it has been pretty much a case of the corporations have been hit, at least around Peckham?
Absolutely. I mean, last night driving down the Old Kent Road, they were turning over the local Carphone warehouse. And I drove past just at the point where the sirens had brought the riot police down, and about 50 youths scattered with armfuls of possessions, and they caught one, who was obviously the last one at the back of the storeroom, being a bit greedy and didn't get out through the shutter before the riot van got there.
Because obviously the mainstream impression...
But now, my point there being that either side of Carphone Warehouse were two of these exactly what I'm describing here, these local food suppliers, these low-value, local-owned shops, and they were touched. None of the local...
Yeah, the mainstream perception, though, is that basically this is just out of control. Like, I work in a big office, basically, and everybody in the office... was saying, bring in the army. And now, basically, what's happened is the main police station in Nottingham's been firebombed. Now, whatever you happen to particularly feel about that, that's going to be mainstream. That's all that's going to be talked about at my work tomorrow. And basically, people are going to be suggesting that we need to do something about it because these people are indoctrinated. It's not their fault.
I put in the chat box. I put in the chat box there earlier that any attempt to exert martial law in this country is a declaration of civil war. So our masters are not going to declare open civil war because we've been under martial law for whatever it is, 19,500 years now.
Yeah, but I don't think that's going to stop them shooting.
Could you
see that? That's the
bloody down for me? Sorry.
You know, that may well be true, but it's not going to stop them shooting people. And they are going to start shooting people.
You've all, again there, we're getting into Gandhi territory there, and the facts are in about that. And no matter how much you indoctrinate a soldier, even when you're getting them to shoot on unarmed civilians in a foreign land where the foreigner has been prescribed as the enemy, like Afghanistan or Iraq, I think you'll find that the stats still hold that your average soldier will only shoot to kill 9 people. After that, he will either put his gun down and walk off the battlefield, or he'll start shooting to maim. Yeah, now this is somebody that he has been basically trained and indoctrinated into believing is the enemy. Now, when that enemy becomes their cousins, their uncles, their aunts, it's a very different matter. And I don't care how fucking powers that be plan and machinate, I don't think they can pull it off.
But surely that's why the sort of what's his name, McNamara and the Rosadi were doing all this sort of. That's exactly why they've been so heavily indoctrinating people with this Rosadi McNamara sort of style thing, because people were shooting high, and I agree. I agree, and I hope you're absolutely right. But I still think that the prevalent sort of message should be. I don't know if the momentum is enough to drive it into some sort of revolution. Do you know what I mean? I think that basically all this is doing is setting it up. You're cocking back the hammer. That's what you're doing. That's all that's going to happen. And I don't know. I really don't know. I think a lot of people that are doing this aren't doing it, even when they're attacking sort of what could be considered in activist terms legitimate targets. I don't think they're doing it for legitimate reasons. I certainly, maybe in London, perhaps, because I've not seen that, but in other areas, I'll tell you what was robbed, what happened in Nottingham. They attacked the police station, and then they ran to the other end of the town, and they kicked in the JD Sports and a jewellers. And and whilst, you know, I agree with the concept of the machinations of the military-industrial complex and how it needs basically a kick in the balls. I don't think that's what these people are doing.
Can I also point out that if each squaddy only kills 9 people and then maims a few, that's an awful lot of dead and maimed people before they stop.
Yeah, but what I was suggesting there is that is the absolute upper limit. Yeah. Those people have to be demonised. Essentially, you would be talking about, say, the British Army during the Second World War. in the last days when they were walking into Berlin, when they would have considered all of the civilians to have been effectively their enemy. Yeah, they would have been expecting any of them to be carrying a concealed weapon to essentially be trying to kill them. Yeah, and so therefore they can be viewed as an enemy combatant.
Yeah, you're not going to get into trouble for shooting anybody in those circumstances. So.
No, precisely. And basically the actual statistics come from Gandhi's open-handed march onto the British guns.
Right.
And when Gandhi marched his, I think it was tens or hundreds of thousands of unarmed civilians onto the British guns, the British soldiers were literally putting down their weapons and walking off the battlefield.
That is true, but Gandhi was murdered.
Yeah, well, again, yeah, but I'm suggesting that if what we've got to bear it right. First of all, we're talking about psychopaths, all right. We're talking about psychopaths in power. They don't have any knowledge of what it is to be human.
Right.
Yeah? They've never held a baby in their arms and felt their heart pour out of their body. Yeah, they've never cried with laughter. Yeah, they've never even experienced probably an orgasm like any of us will. Okay, the very simplest of pleasures of life are denied to them.
Yeah, they're not in any way capable of creating anything, are they? They're just parasitic by nature.
And so, if these are the men who are plotting against us, what is it that has stopped them from completely enslaving us already? They've had 2,000 years of trying, at very least, if not 4,000, possibly going back longer, but 2,000 years of pretty fucking good efforts on all sides, and we are still essentially our own people.
I don't think they knew how to do it to start with, Jack, to be honest. I think this last probably 6,000 years has been a grandmaster aim, if you like, that they've slowly honed in on. Technology and knowledge, etc., has got to the point where they think they can do it now. You know, I believe that we're approaching an end game, as you were saying. I don't know much about the Mayan calendar, to be honest, but
explain that back to the Mayan calendar.
Okay, well, the real importance of the 13th Bacton, which is the Bacton that we entered on the 11th of February this year, is it's the final Bacton of the Mayan calendar. Now, each Bacton is made up of 7 days and 6 nights, and they are pretty much a 1/20th factor of length than the previous one. Okay, so this Bacton is whatever it is, 560 days long. The previous one was almost 10 years, I think, or certainly 5-6 years. The one before that was 25, 30, 40 years, going right the way back to one that was 16 billion years long. The first Bacton was like almost the length of the universe, except for the last few minutes.
Right.
And essentially, in each of these Bactons, there's an identifiable fifth night, which is kind of the low point. It's the waning moon. It's the outpouring, and the fifth night of the 13th Bacton should be coming up around about now. In comparison to the fifth night of the 12th Bacton, which is almost entirely coincident with the dates of the 2008 economic crash, by extrapolating out from the severity and the nature of the 12th Bacton's fifth night, then we should only be up for a fifth night of a duration of approximately 2 weeks maximum.
Right. So wherever it happens, your estimation
is likely to be pretty intense, but again, on a scale of each one becomes more. Each fifth night has become less physical and more emotional.
Right.
So yes, this fifth night will be very upsetting. It will be very emotional. It will be very tumultuous. But I don't know if any of you noticed, but apart from that one guy getting shot, there's almost no casualties.